Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another Monday with Mimi. Sounds so weird to say that. I just feel like going Monday with me. Um, so, anyway, I'm going to just jump right into it. I hope everyone is doing well. Um, I'm kind of getting back on track little by little, trying to, stick with the writing. Um, and not get down when certain things like the very first vlog that you might have seen. It talks about like the book piracy and stuff that's still going on, but what can you really do after sending your DMCA takedown notices and you know all that kind of good stuff? What else can you do? You either keep writing and producing your stories, or you throw in the towel. And I wasn't made for much more than being a storyteller. That's what I was born to do. My mother even said, she was like, "You came out talking," and I believe that she's probably not exaggerating too far from the truth, considering the fact that when I actually gave birth to my first child, I talked through the whole thing. No joke. Like the nurses would tell you, I talked throughout the whole thing. Listen. I think we need to do this. I think we need to do that. You know what? I think this baby is coming right now. I talked. It was an all natural birth, and all I did was talk. And they were laughing. They were like, "You are the first person we've ever seen." Usually, women are yelling, they're screaming, they're making demands. They were like, "You're the first one talking through the whole thing." And I was like, well, that's kind of what I do. So, anyway, um, you know, it this is what I do then. This is talking, singing, telling stories. Yeah, I sing too. Maybe one day. I'll sing a little piece so that you all can hear how how I sound. I don't know. Maybe when I finish recording my first audiobook, or I'll sing something in there. Maybe I'll write it into a book, and then I plan on recording my own audio one day. So maybe I'll have a little singing in that or something. We'll see. But anyway, the last vlog talked about the novella, and I thought, what better subject to address in this blog than for aspiring authors and readers too, to understand what the novella is, or more importantly, or more specifically, how to write the novella. And so what I figured I would do is just a small little video that shares the outline that I use for writing a novella. And I write on an outline, and the reason being is because part of my studies was screenwriting, and I worked with a producer from Nickelodeon who said anyone can get in the car and get from here to California, but chances are good you'll get lost along the way. You probably would have made a lot fewer wrong turns if you had a map, though. And that's why he always insisted that we did an outline before we would start writing a screenplay. He wanted to see the outline first, so that to see that we had an understanding of where we were going. And so that's what I write off of. I used to write on a very tight outline, it was Roman numeral 1 and then A, B, 1, 2, 3. I used to write like that. I've gotten out of that because of the fact that it is the novella. So it's less in depth for the outline. It's not a thesis. There's no reason to write to that extent, an outline to that extent. And also because I've started realizing that I'm something of a plantser. So for people who might not know what that is, it's a writer that's in between a plotter and a pantser. A plotter is someone who outlines everything. They need it all spelled out for them. And a pantser is, flies by the seat of their pants, hence the word pantser. And I used to be the hardcore plotter. I needed to know everything. And in some regards, I'm still like that with certain things. Like if I'm working in a multi-author project, then I need to know what are all the details about the world, what are other people writing, how many words do I need to produce, by when, etc. Like I need to still know all of the details so that because I want to make sure that I'm holding up my end of the bargain, that I'm doing my part or my share of the work for the project to be successful. And we'll talk more about multi-author projects at a later time. But for myself, for my own personal work, I no longer plot so tightly. What I do now is a kind of chapter by chapter outline, and it's only maybe a paragraph long or a few paragraphs. Like this chapter is about so and so, and they're going to be doing such and such to achieve this goal by the end of the chapter. And if there's anything important that I need to know, and these people need to appear, or this for sure needs to happen, and that's my outline. It's a paragraph or two. And then I do that throughout the whole book, and I just write the book chapter by chapter. But I do have an overview kind of outline that I use for a novella anyway. And I wanted to talk about that for anyone who is interested in knowing more about how to write a novella. Or who wonders, maybe readers who wonder why the novella? Like how am I still getting a full story in a novella compared to a novel? Things of that nature. So I'm going to look at my phone. I actually have my novel on the outline. You can't see it. Well, kind of, sort of, when I put it this way. Well, I'm going to read it to everyone. And that way, who knows, maybe it might help someone and maybe not. If not, then my process. There you go. So for the romance novella, chapters 1 and 2 is when I set up the characters and the plot. I introduce the romantic elements. I try to get in the action and as quickly as possible, get the conflict underway as fast as I can. So chapter 1, I usually do alternating point of view. Chapter 1 might be the male. I'll give an example. Betting a Bridget is what I'm currently working on, or what I just finished. And I will do chapter 1 is Taryn McDougal, and he is showing up in his hometown, and the plot is that he needs to help somebody. That would be Hades and Persephone from the first book. And he wants to find this goddess in order to do so. And he knows that she must be around, or somebody in his town must know where he could possibly find her or how to summon her, because he grew up with a gran who had the sight. She had this gift, and so he knows that there's got to be a witch or two around town. And so the plot would be like needing to help his friends and finding this goddess in order to do so. The conflict being who can he ask in this town that he's sure that there are witches, but how do you approach someone and say, are you a witch? So right away, there's already things developing. There's something going on. And that would be chapter 1. Chapter 2 would be the introduction of the heroine. That would be Bridget in this case. And you just reiterate the same thing as to what conflicts she's, looking at. And also part of the plot, if you know anything about the goddess Bridget, she is mother, maiden, and crone all at the same time. So in her particular situation, it's about reincarnation, and she is currently the maiden, but it's time for her to enter the phase of mother. And how is she supposed to do so? She doesn't even really want to, because this is present day. She's got the mindset of a woman in today's time. Like, it's about having a career and living free, and she doesn't necessarily want to settle down and have children and do all of the things that are supposed to be done in order to enter this next phase. So you've got more plot developing there and more conflict getting underway. So that's basically how chapters 1 and 2 begin. Set up the characters, the plot, introduce the romantic elements. Obviously, these two people are going to be the love interests, and what conflict they might be looking at. Chapters 3 through 5 is all about the conflict. It's about the tension and the further development of the budding romance. So we are just, each chapter you have to decide, chapters 3, 4, and 5, what is something that's going to happen to create conflict in chapter 3? What is going to happen in chapter 4? What is going to happen in chapter 5? It's like a little conflict, small resolve. More conflict, maybe not a small resolve. You know, but it still is just building one more issue. And the romance, usually there's more tension, there's more attraction. They're wanting to get together, but they really can't get together, mostly usually because of some inner turmoil, although there might be also outer conflicts as well. So that happens between chapters 3 and 5. Chapters 6 and 7 are the build up to the crisis. What is the big crisis in this situation, in this story? Well, there's a couple things. Chapters 3 through 5 in Betting of Bridget also develop the conflict of something not going right in the town. The town, once upon a time, it really was magical. The problem is people seem to be forgetting about magic. Why? How is that possible in a town where there exists a goddess? And the goddess hasn't really been paying attention because she is a modern day woman who is enjoying her life. She doesn't really care that people are not necessarily calling on her for assistance. So by the time we get to chapters 6 and 7, the build up to the crisis is, okay, I need to enter the next phase. Magic is dying in this town. He, Taran, still has to help his friends Hades and Persephone, and they're attracted to each other, but they've got these other issues that they've got to deal with, the loss of magic, helping Hades and Persephone, and they're falling in love, but they've got all these issues. So you can't put as much attention towards the romance as you want, that kind of thing. So those are what's coming up in chapters 6 and 7. The story should totally be plot driven now because it is a novella. So you want to add in the details, but you also want to remember what Strunk and White say in the Elements of Style about brevity. You know, brevity is a blessing. You want to be brief. You don't have to get into these long, drawn out explanations. Paint the scene. You don't need to take 1 to 2 pages to paint the scene or the environment as to where they are. You can do that in a paragraph or 2, so that you can focus on the plot, make the story, drive forward with the plot, the romance to be heating up, the conflict and tension getting ready to peak. And every single time, with the romance heating up and you think there's going to be more conflict and tension, right here around chapters 6 and 7, you can make the choice. If your book has intimate, steamy scenes, will they have the meetup and get to be with one another right now or not? And if not, why not? What is it that's really keeping them from being together? And if so, then yay, they get to be together, but what terrible thing is going to happen afterwards that they can't be together after they've done the deed? Okay, they've declared their love. They've had this very beautiful romantic moment. But this terrible thing happens now. They don't know if they should be together, if they can trust one another. Why not? So you have to think about those things. Chapter 8 is the crisis, aka the black moment. And usually that plays into chapters 6 and 7. So let's say chapter 7, they have this beautiful moment. They learn this terrible truth. And chapter 8 is all about this terrible truth, this black moment falling deeper into the hole. Then chapter 9 is the climax and falling action. So towards the end of chapter 8, there might be like a little light at the end of the tunnel. And then chapter 9 is all about getting to the end of that light and reaching that high point, like, oh, you know what? I need to fix this problem in order to have this solution. So that's like the rise to the climax, the like terrible part. And in this particular situation with Betting a Bridget, it would be who the real villain is and why and who all is involved. And then the falling action is going to, confront them. In chapter 10, you get the resolution and the happily ever after. And those are how I write a story. Usually it's 10 chapters. Every now and then, because of my happily ever after, like sometimes I like to take a little extra time in really telling the story. And so let's say chapter 10, like chapter 9, I might have the climax of meeting this, who the real villain is, and addressing it and trying to fight them off. And then chapter 10 is the resolution where all of that is coming down. It's like chapter 9 kind of feeds into chapter 10. And then I'll have at the very end of the chapter, the, couple will decide, yeah, I want to be with you. I love you. And then the happily ever after will occur in the epilogue, where it'll say something like 3 months later, 2 weeks later, a year later, or whatever it might be, that they're getting married, they're having a child, they find out they're pregnant, like something extra. So you'll find out in chapter 10 that the couple has decided to be together, but it'll be your happily ever after, the true moment of peace and tranquility and true love and everything else will happen in that epilogue, which is usually 2 or 3 pages long, sometimes longer, but usually it's just a couple of pages long. And it just gives you a really solid HEA, happily ever after. And so that's kind of how I write a novella. That's how I've been taught. That's coming from other writers who have shared this with me. And I feel that it is the most direct way to write a story without dragging on. And maybe, like, I got that in my very first novel, in A Rebel in Jericho. I heard it was a good story, but some people would complain it could have been shortened. It felt like in some parts it dragged on a little too much, or that they were unnecessary. And when I thought about it, it's true. It was because I was trying to write for a traditional publisher. I was trying to meet an editor from Harlequin, I'll just say. I was trying to meet what it was that she wanted for word count, and so I kept adding a little more. But adding a little more, all that was really doing was adding fluff. And I don't see the point in adding fluff to a book if a lot of what is happening can occur quickly, or it's already known information. Like somebody might be reading it and they are like, I already know about Hades or Persephone. I already know about XYZ. I don't need every little detail. Then it's like, okay, well then I'm just going to maybe in a couple of sentences, kind of go over it. Just kind of like a small review over in a couple of sentences instead of pages or a chapter or whatever dedicated to this one thing. It's just a few sentences to remind people this, we're talking about Greeks, we're talking about, we're in Scotland right now, or whatever it might be that the story is about. And that way it can occur quickly. The story can occur quickly. It can unfold in a speed that keeps the reader's interest. And so that's why I write the novella as I do, and that's the outline that I use. Part of the reason I wanted to share that also, not only because of aspiring writers who might want to know how to write the novella, but I did actually have a reader recently comment in regards to Pleasing Persephone that she loved the story. She really liked the story, but she wanted to love it, and she felt like she couldn't love it because it was a novella, and it felt like there was so much more that could have been told in the story. And I was like, well, but then I would run the risk of upsetting readers for taking too long to just get to the love part, you know? And plus, it's the fact that it's a series, it's not a standalone. Standalone books, yeah, really should not be novellas, in my opinion. That's my opinion. Standalone books probably should be the 50, 60, 70 plus counts. But novellas that are part of series, they probably shouldn't take that long because each book should be contributing to the next book. And every book in the series should contribute to the overall overarching plot, you know, so the story arc. So that's why I'm kind of like, I could understand, and I would rather have a reader say they were disappointed that it wasn't long enough than that it was too long and it bored them. I never want a reader to be bored, ever. I would rather a reader be craving more, so that when the next story comes out, they want to read it, and so on and so forth. So that's another reason that I write the novella. And as I just went over it, this is how I do it. So hopefully that was a little, informative for someone. And if you have any questions, any further questions about it, then please leave a comment. Or if you have other questions or concerns, anything else that you want to know, particularly writing related. But any other questions that you might have, just leave a comment about that, and I will try to address it in the next video. So, all right, I hope everyone has a great week, and blessings. Bye.